for the immediate future. We appreciate her taking over for us. And first off, I just wanted to see if there were any additions to the agenda that anyone would like to bring up. You can either put it in the chat or speak up if there's anything you'd like to add today.
Yes. My assistant director on the last agenda item on circulation status, she would like to see available dash on display.
Awesome. We'll note that for that discussion. So save that. We'll talk about it again.
Perfect. Okay. And for Meg for the minutes, it looks like I think that was Pam from Fremont. I forgot to mention if everyone could just say your first name and your library when speaking, just to make the minutes a little easier, that will be much appreciated. So thank you very much for that. Now that we've got anybody else with any additions to the agenda? Doesn't sound like it. Okay. So in that case, we can go on and look at the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review those after Deborah sent those out yesterday. If there are any revisions that anyone thinks need to be made, please let us know now. Okay, I think that means we're all set. So then, hearing no revisions, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent as distributed. So we are good to move on from there. I will hand it over to Deborah to talk. Oh, sorry, no first officer reports, but we do not have any officer reports for this meeting. So we'll move on to CCS staff reports.
Okay, I am just looking in the chat. Anna from Round Lake mentioned that there is maybe an issue where you type a title into the catalog link on your library's homepage and you're taken to a CCS screen that says your session timed out. So Anna, I might touch base with you after the meeting and maybe open a help desk ticket with you so that we can look at the code on your library's like homepage search box widget. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to CCS staff updates. I have quite a few today. The first is that CCS is currently hiring. So you may have seen our notice in CCS News. We're currently hiring for 2 positions. We have our member services associate position. This is actually a new position, and it is focused primarily on support and training for all of our members. And then we have our UX specialist position, which is Kathleen's old position. So that position is focused on the user experience, both of patrons and staff. So you can find the full job descriptions for both posts on our website, and feel free to share them with anyone that you think might be a good fit. So we're looking forward to adding a couple new people to our team. Next up is the Polaris 7.5 upgrade. This is scheduled for Monday, February 26th after libraries close, so beginning around 10 p.m. Central Time. You can learn more about all of the features that are included in 7.5 in the What's New in Polaris 7.5 documentation. I'll go ahead and I'll pop that link into the chat. Or Miko, if you're here, can you pop that link into the chat for me? I'd appreciate it. There's a few cool, interesting new features, and we're going to talk about one of them a little bit later when we talk about weeding. So the training database is already upgraded to 7.5. So if you want to get in there and test out some of the new features that you read about in the What's New doc, feel free to do that ahead of the production upgrade. So again, that's going to be Monday, February 26th after libraries close. So we're still a month and a half out, but add it to your calendar. Right. The next update I have is about the text-it functionality in PowerPack. So we shared this update in last week's CCS News, but I just want to run it by this group again. As many of you know, we launched a new text messaging service back in August of 2023, and that service was MessageBee. But since we launched MessageBee back in August, we've had a sort of an intermittent issue where some patrons who receive duplicate text message notices have gotten 2 auto renewal text notices, one sent from Polaris and one sent from MessageBee. And that's caused by sort of this inability to like turn off those auto renewal messages from Polaris. So to resolve this issue, we are going to begin forwarding all remaining Polaris text message traffic to MessageBee beginning on Monday, January 15th. So this coming Monday. So this is going to include e-receipt text messages, as well as, again, those auto renewal messages that are still getting sent out by Polaris. So as part of the solution, we do need to disable the text it functionality in PowerPack while we work with MessageBee to figure out if that feature is something that we can transition to their service. At this time, that's not something that they're able to send, but it is a possibility they can build that out for us. So that feature is going to be disabled Monday morning before libraries open. I'm not really sure of the usage of patrons of this feature. It has worked kind of intermittently over the past few years. We've had lots of issues with those text messages not going out. So if you do receive feedback from your patrons on like, where did this go? We use it a lot. Let us know. At this time, we don't really have a good sense of whether or not patrons are using it. So if you get feedback, give us a heads up and we'll work with MessageBee to see if we have an option to transition that service. Okay, I'm going to put in a plug for our CCS member update. We are hosting a webinar next week, Thursday, January 1st at 11 a.m. We're just going to take a little look back at what we did in 2023 and talk about what is coming next for CCS in 2024. So you can register for the member update on L2. If you can't make it, that's okay. We'll record it and share it out after it's done. All right, and then this one I am very excited about. This is a little plug for participating in the GLAM Career Jam. So GLAM is a virtual career fair hosted by a number of schools with library science programs, including U of I. So employers can participate in the GLAM Career Jam, which is, again, it's a virtual career fair in a couple of different ways. So you can host a 30-minute informational session on your organization and talk about open positions that you might have. You can participate in kind of these short 10-minute networking mentoring sessions. And then you can also host a panel on a relevant topic to new grads. So CCS is going to participate. It's on Friday, I think it's a Friday, February 23rd. And we are looking for volunteers from our member libraries to sit on some of our virtual panels. So we have a couple of topics that we've suggested based on talking to the event organizers. They're working in public library makerspaces, skills for technical services success, hot topics and collection development, maintenance, and then kind of whatever else we would want to talk about. So each panel would have 2 to 3 participants, and each person would speak for about 5 minutes on the topic. And then there would be about 15 to 20 minutes for questions from participating students. In previous years, students who have participated have said that they really want to hear from staff who are working at libraries instead of kind of talking to HR professionals who are doing the hiring. So they really wanted to hear from actual staff on, relevant topics so that they can kind of connect with some librarians and learn a little bit more from them. So if you're interested in participating, talk to your director. Rebecca sent out all of this information to LibAdmin, and you can sign up by filling out this form. So again, these topics that we've posted, they're just suggestions based on talking to the organizers, based like on what students wished they had seen in previous years. But these can change if you're interested in participating, and you have a different topic that you're like, this would be really useful for some library students and recent grads. Like, let us know, fill out that form, and CCS will kind of take on the coordinating of assigning people to panels, coordinating meetings to prep ahead of time, and then hosting and helping to facilitate the actual sessions. pause and see if anyone has any questions on that. Yeah, so we decided to participate. It was a suggestion from one of our directors, Ryan, over at Warren Newport. There's really very few public libraries who have signed up to participate. So, I think this is a great opportunity for CCS libraries to do a little bit of mentoring, coaching, and networking with some new librarians out there. Okay, and I think that's going to take me to the end of my updates. That was quite a few. Sam, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, so that wraps up the CCS staff reports. Then we can move on to the old business. So for those of you who weren't at the September meeting, we did have a lengthy discussion with some issues that many libraries were having with Novelist in the Power Pack, showing that items were not owned by the library that in reality were. So CCS was going to do some digging into that. So I can turn it back over to Deborah to give us an update on those issues.
Yeah, so the issues were kind of twofold. There was a little buggy problem with Novelist that has since been fixed. But there is a second issue that we're still working with Novelist to resolve. Essentially, because our database is so big, the Novelist harvest, where they pull out our holdings to then populate the availability and some of those Novelist select modules in PAC, it's taking too long. So it's taking multiple weeks for them to complete that harvest because the harvest pauses at various times in the day. So we're working with Novelist to figure out some alternate solutions to that kind of multi-week harvest that's currently in place. The solution most likely includes like us doing like a full database extract with all of our holdings and then sending it to Novelist like once a month or every couple of weeks. So we're still exploring the feasibility of doing that, but hopefully we should have an update for everyone within the next few weeks. So no solution in place yet, but we know what's causing that and we have a couple of options to fix it moving forward. So hopefully we'll be able to get that sorted out soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Deborah. So that wraps up our old business. So moving on to new business, things that were submitted by PAS members for this meeting. First up, we have a discussion on tracking clicks in the Power Pack. So the question is, can we track data on how many times catalog dashboards are clicked? This was submitted by David at Des Plaines. So he asked about the accordion links on the catalog pages for new and or promoted searches. We'd like to have some way of knowing if these are being clicked on. So David, is there anything else you'd like to add for context with that or to elaborate before I turn that back over to Deborah?
Sure. Yeah, this is David Whittingham, Des Plaines Public Library. We recently changed a bunch of those links on our catalog, and we realized we didn't have any information on like which ones were getting used and which ones were not. And so we wanted that information to determine what was effective and what was not, and to maybe come up with some new ideas to get more clicks. So we did change a bunch of them, and I will say like that in the few weeks that have transpired since we changed them, there was like a dead week where like things didn't go through, so things weren't working. And we actually got a bunch of emails from patrons that said, this link isn't working, this link isn't working. So we did find out that they were getting clicked on, which was good because I didn't think they probably were. So that's the only information I really have. That's in addition to that is that they do seem to be getting a lot more use than we thought they were. But we would like to be able to track them so that we could see going forward.
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit about that. I'm going to share my screen quickly just so everyone I can show you what Dave is talking about. So in PowerPack, libraries have the option to add links on the left-hand side. It could also be on the right-hand side if you'd prefer your menus or your dashboards to be there. So libraries can customize what appears in these different dashboards. A lot of libraries use them to link to like book lists of new items, on order items, youth book lists, etc. So in Polaris, there's no way for Polaris to like natively track clicks on these dashboards. However, if you are interested in tracking clicks, you can use like a link tracking service like Bitly to like convert these URLs to Bitly URLs. And then CCS can update all of these dashboard links for you to use like for example, Bitly or a different service. And then you would be able to track clicks on your end. So again, there's no way for Polaris to track those clicks, but if you wanted to use a different link tracking service like Bitly or an alternate service, send us those URLs and we can replace the existing ones with those new ones. And again, we can do that for these links on the left-hand side. If you have links in your upper menu, we can also replace those as well. We do have, I think, a couple libraries. Maybe it's Niles that is using Bitly links to track clicks. So some libraries are already doing it, and it's definitely an option.
We have
Does
a
that help,
comment.
David? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say we have a comment in the chat as well from Emily at Park Ridge, saying related question. If we create a catalog link to a bibliographic record set that's unable to be shortened using a URL shortener so that we can track clicks of those links that are listed on our website. The help desk ticket I submitted with the URL shortener I was using said that it's because there's an IP in the catalog link. Is there a way to fix that, or is that just something we need to work with our website folks to get clicks on without a URL shortener?
That issue does not ring a bell to me. Mieko, does that sound familiar to you? Emily, maybe I'll need to dig up that ticket. Is that a ticket with CCS that you had? Oh, okay. That I was not aware that was an issue because there are some libraries who are using Bitly links already. So I'm gonna have to dig into that and I can send an update out to the group after the meeting if that's okay.
You were asking me if that was a good answer, and yes, that answers my question. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Emily. I saw your reply. So we'll look into it. And if you have any info, Emily, can you forward it to me from your URL shortener people who are helping you? Because there shouldn't be an IP address in the URL. So we'll look into it.
All right, thanks so much. So next up on the agenda is weeding workflow. So what is your library's workflow for weeding collections? And do selectors need approval for items that are weeded? Looks like Polaris is introducing a new, or has introduced a new weeding workflow that will allow a supervisor to approve items that are selected for weeding by their staff. So CCS is interested in how we currently manage weeding all of our collections. So I can go ahead and start off with our collection or weeding policy at Fox River Valley. Each selector is basically fully in charge of weeding their own areas. They run reports and Simply reports, go through all that, determine what needs to be weeded. They create record sets, and then we take it down to our technical services to just physically withdraw the items at that point and purge them from Polaris. But it is fully within the specific selector's purview what they want to get rid of. So they don't need supervisor or director approval or anything like that. What about everybody else's libraries? How do you guys handle that?
I can follow up with that at Algonquin. Our process is similar to what you described, Sam. Each selector is responsible for their own collections. They don't need supervisor approval or anything. Currently, our librarians will check items out to a withdrawn account, which tech services then manages. We add it to a record set and withdraw the items. But I am looking at making a change to go again to what you were describing, Sam, to where the items get added directly to a record set to be withdrawn. But there's no supervisor approval required.
Thank you, Henry.
David Whittingham Displays. Ours is also very similar to yours, but I'm a manager and I manage a bunch of people that have selection responsibilities, and they do have autonomy to do their own weeding. But I will also say that usually new people, when they're first starting, probably for their first year, I ask them to show me their weeding carts before they withdraw them. And so that's something we do as a practice.
Thank you, David.
Sarah
yeah.
Jo chimed in the chat saying, well, Met similar, that selectors are responsible for weeding their collections and they don't have any supervision. And same at Prospect Heights.
Pam and Fremont, same thing. We create our reports, we go through the stacks. The selectors actually do the physical removing, check it out to withdrawn, and then give it all the tech services, and they decide what goes to their friend sale, what goes to discovery books, and what gets ditched.
At Crystal Lake, we still have my assistant manager and myself, well, mostly her, will review what selectors have withdrawn, partially to make sure that, like, if we're reading books 3 through 5 of a series, why are we keeping books 1 and 2? Or is it just because of damage? So we are still having some of that. There are some selectors, especially if they're newer, we do keep closer tabs on. Ones that have been here a while, we sort of just like, okay, that's nice. And, you know, we continue with the withdrawal process. So we're probably a little old fashioned on that, but it helps for all of us to know what's going on.
And for me to piggyback off of what Nancy was just saying, this is Sam again at Fox River Valley. Similar with, you know, newer staff being supervised a little bit more heavily to make sure that they're catching those things like book 3 in a series and so on, so that we're not leaving random gaps in collections. That is something that maybe management will take a closer look at for newer staff who haven't been weeding previously.
This is Sally from Glenview Public Library. We're similar. We the selectors, though selectors don't have, and I just do youth, just so you know. They don't have individual areas, though I'm assigning areas. Everything is checked out, put on a cart in a record set, though I do the final approval primarily because it's youth, like you say, series. Also, I just want to make sure that since we're getting, our weeding guidelines are pretty strict lately, we're looking at things after 2 years for fiction, 3 years for nonfiction. So I'm just making sure we're not getting rid of something we should be keeping. And then I do the final kind of record set, which goes to tech and they delete it.
So it sounds like everyone's kind of similar. There's lots of comments in the chat saying, you know, similar workflow, selectors, weed, send it to tech or circ for withdrawal. And a couple comments that for new staff, managers sometimes also kind of review carts before they're withdrawn. So I think I'm just gonna like show you guys kind of what this workflow is in 7.5 and what it looks like. I'm gonna fumble my way through it is what I should really say. It's new, it's a little bit confusing, so we're kind of still learning how it's gonna work once we do that upgrade. So I'm gonna share my screen and walk you through it, and I'd be really interested to hear from all of you if you think this is something that you would use or would find useful, because that'll help us kind of plan our training schedule. And I have Mieko and Rachel here as well. Again, we've all kind of been figuring this out together. So I might call on them to help me explain something when I get stumped here. So the first kind of, the new weeding workflow in 7.5 involves like 2 new kinds of records, a weeding template and then a weeding record set. So the first step to this process is establishing what's called a weeding template. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the find tool to pull up a weeding template that I've already created. It's right here. It is my fiction DVD weeding template. So I'm going to open that up. So a weeding template allows you to do a couple of different things. It allows you to set some some settings that determine what happens with an item when it's approved. So with this weeding template, you have the option to automatically mark items as withdrawn, either when the weeding record set is approved by a supervisor, when items are added to the weeding record set, or if you don't want it to happen automatically, you can also disable this sort of automated withdrawn step. There is also the option to have items approved for weeding automatically deleted. So this could potentially save your technical services department some time from needing to manually delete them. There's also the option to alert within the weeding record set for the last copy available, we believe, system-wide. You also have this discard amount setting. So this discard amount would display in the weeding record set. So you can see, you know, what's the value of the item itself. And this value would be pulled either from the item record or the template. Then you also have the option to add criteria for your weeding record set. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the criteria established in this particular weeding template. So my weeding template is specifically for DVDs older than 3 years. And here I've set some inclusion criteria. So the inclusion criteria are the items or the group of items that I am looking at for weeding. So in this example, I'm looking at items owned by Highland Park that have a circulation status of available, because I don't want to look at lost, missing, things that are checked out, etc., with a material type of DVD and a stat code of feature film. So this inclusion criteria is used to exclude items from the record set. So I'm not able to add items to my weeding record set unless they fill or fit in with this criteria I've set here. So if I try to add, let's say, a Blu-ray to my weeding record set, it wouldn't let me add it because it is not one of the material types I included in my inclusion criteria. So it's kind of nice. It sets like guardrails to make sure that like a mistake doesn't happen and you don't accidentally add something you weren't supposed to be looking at. And then here at the bottom, you can set item filters. So these won't prevent an item from being added to your weeding record set if the item doesn't fall within the parameters you set, but it will flag them. So here, for example, I said I only want to, look at items older than 3 years. If I add an item that is only 2 years old, it would flag it within the weeding record set to say, hey, this didn't meet your filters. So then after you establish your weeding template, then you can build your weeding record set. So I'm going to close my template. I'm going to open up or find my weeding record set. So it's a new type of record set. I am going to go ahead and open one I already created. Miko, Rachel, and I have been testing a lot, so you'll see quite a few weeding record sets here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up one I put together yesterday. So here's my weeding record set. It looks just like any other old record set. And here in this record set, I have added some DVDs that haven't circulated in 3 or more years that are also at least 3 years old. So I manually scan some items in here. You're able to, again, scan items into a record set. You can search for them using the Find tool. You can also add items from, let's say, a file or a spreadsheet. Say you built a weeding report in Simply Reports. You can download that Excel file, and then you can import those items into your weeding record set. Now here, I don't have any items that are flagged. So I know that all of these items meet the criteria I had set in my weeding template. So once I sort of have my weeding record set ready to go, I've reviewed all the items. I want to, as a selector, withdraw all of the items that I see here. I can go ahead and I can, up at the top actions menu, submit this record set for approval from my supervisor. You can also submit the record set for review. Miko, would you mind unmuting yourself and explaining what the difference between those two are? I'm sorry to call on you.
No, that's okay.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can
If you can't, that's okay.
summarize
We'll
this.
send out the answer
okay.
after the meeting.
Well, I think if you submit it for review, it's like one additional like staff member who's involved. So you can submit it for review and like have your immediate supervisor review it and then send it on to a third party for like the formal approval process. So it's just, I think, another option worked in terms of workflows.
And it doesn't sound like any of us have kind of that like 3-tiered approval process. So I'm not sure anyone would use submit for review. But it's there and we can do some more digging into how that works. So I'm just going to go ahead though and submit this record set for approval. So now that I've submitted that for approval, I'm going to switch and pretend I am my supervisor. So if I go up to the utilities menu, there's a new option in 7.5 called the approval dashboard. And the first tab in your approval dashboard is weeding requests. So I can see here is the weeding records that was previously submitted for approval. So if I'm a supervisor, I can open the record set. I can look at all of the items included in the record set. I can take some items out if I don't think that they should be weeded. And then when I'm ready, I can select this record set, this weeding record set, and I can choose to either decline or approve it. So you remember in my weeding template, I had set the option for when the record set was approved, items would be automatically set to withdrawn and they would be deleted. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to approve this. And I'm in training, so don't worry, Highland Park. I'm not actually going to delete any of your items. I'm going to approve this. It's going to ask me like, am I sure? I'm going to click continue. And then we'll see that my weeding request was approved successfully, and then it leaves my active request and it moves over to recently processed. So if I open this record set, again, we can see now all of these items have been automatically set to withdrawn, and then they have also now been marked for deletion. So these items are still in the system, but they'll be deleted then the next month when we run our item purge. So that's
Dave- oh,
kind
sorry.
of the gist of how it works. David, go ahead. You had a question?
Yeah, I did have a question. So, if you're a supervisor and you're using this and you say don't want to weed one of the items on your list, so you take it off the list, how does that get back to the selector and the cart of books that you're actually weeding? Does it send a notice? Does it, that's my question. So,
I do not believe it would notify anyone. So I think you would just have to make note of it and then tell the selector like, no, I want this one to stay in circulation, take it off your cart and go put it back on the shelf. So
Okay.
that is a fatal flaw, but maybe that's a good idea of how it can be improved if at some point you want to submit an idea exchange suggestion.
okay, thank you.
I had a question, and I think you briefly talked about it, but I may have just missed it. So once you have the template, what does the selector actually use to go to the shelf? Like, is there a report? And if there's a report, is that something we're customizing in Simply Reports, or is it a standardized report?
Yeah,
can
so
we?
that's a good question. And this is kind of where my brain is like, is this useful at all? I think it is, but maybe not for like the inclusion criteria. I'm still kind of on the fence on if I think that's useful. Staff would still have to build their weeding report elsewhere. So when this first came out, I was like, oh, and then it auto adds stuff that meet the criteria, and that doesn't happen. So staff still have to find those items either by running a simpler report, that match your weeding, parameters. You could also use the find tool to kind of select items that might meet whatever your criteria are. I think probably building the report in Simply Reports is the easiest. And then you can import those list of items into your record set and or go pull them from the shelf. So I feel like that is a little bit clunky, but maybe it's coming in a future release.
I mean, my initial kind of view, kind of looking at this, we use a combination of Collection HQ and Simply Reports. We don't necessarily like Collection HQ because sometimes the reports are limited in what they're giving us. But one of the things is nice is that, you know, one of the reports they'll do is say, oh, it's 2 years old and, you know, hasn't circed, that type of thing. But what we prefer is the shelf list from Simply Reports, because that we can get more information like lifetime circs and different things. So if you could somehow kind of bridge that gap so that this actually was a useful report, I think it would probably replace why we like Collection HQ. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think right now, really Amiga, you can chime in with what you think, and Rachel too, if you're here. I think now really the value of this workflow is kind of automating that marking as withdrawn and deleting, right? It like saves a step to have to then send this to tech services, have them build their own record sets. That is really handy. But again, you know, it would be really cool if it could kind of function as a reporting tool as well, have criteria to like populate the record set. But at this time, you still have to do that somewhere else. Oh, and I see some comments in the chat. So Lori asked, how did I figure out the inclusion criteria? Did I search for that first? So I'm going to go back to my weeding template. Sorry. So Lori's asking about this inclusion criteria here. So I actually, this is kind of confusing because you have to write this code yourself. It's using the same type of language that is used in a power search. So I actually built this inclusion criteria from the find tool power search and then modified it slightly to be what I want, like closer to what I wanted it to be. So there's no way, at least that I'm aware of, that like the template would populate this for you. So you kind of have to do, like you have to separately write out your little query here for use in this inclusion criteria. And then Nancy asks, with it being January, yes, this is something I noticed too when testing. Using 0 year to date would not be a very useful criteria for us. Is there a way to indicate previous year 0 circs? And the answer is not at this time, Nancy. Kind of what you see here in terms of the item filters are the options at this time, but maybe they'll make some changes in the future. You can exclude items that have had 0 previous or current year circs in Simply Reports when you're building or building that list of items to include. Because I think that these item filters are just a little bit limited, but again, they're really just meant as flags to make sure that items don't slip in that maybe shouldn't. So I think you'd still apply more detailed criteria when you're building that list in Simply Reports. So Sarah is asking, is there a way to see the current status of items on the report, whether they're available or checked out? If there are checked out, is there a way to put item hold on titles we wish to consider for weeding? That's a good question. Let me just go back to this record set. So in the record set, now all of mine stay withdrawn, but there is the circulation status column here. So that would display, you know, what the item status is, if it's available, if it's on the shelf, if it's on hold, if it's lost, if it's missing, and so on. So you should be able to easily see that right from the record set. Unfortunately, there's not a way from here to like put a hold on everything that's checked out. So you would still have to go through your normal process to put those items on hold. So many good ideas though. I feel like we should have invited Innovative to hear you guys brainstorm this. Let me go back to the chat. Okay. Does anyone feel like this is something that they would use? Maybe? With some testing and playing around?
I'll chime in
Not
from
yet.
I'll chime in from Algonquin. So I'm in tech services and just seeing this process and having been a selector myself at one point, I don't think it saves us a whole lot of time, I'm afraid. If our selectors are just adding things to a record set from a tech services standpoint, I can actually do bulk changes and withdraw the items in just a few steps. So it, especially having like the criteria there, it almost makes things more complicated for our selectors, I would say, as opposed to just adding things to a withdrawn record set and letting us know. One advantage might be that like having a template already set up for withdrawn, uh, we know what's being applied, so it would cut down on the number of clicks and staff error if you click uh, the wrong circulation status, or if you accidentally click the wrong button when you're going to delete and you just remove records instead of delete. It cuts down on that kind of error. But I don't think it would significantly help our withdrawn process right now.
That's a good point about like removing bulk change errors, like removing the possibility of a bulk change error, because I know that does happen sometimes where it's like, ah, shoot, I removed them all from the record set instead of marking them for deletion, like done that. So totally hear you on that, Henry. So in the chat, Michelle says maybe they would use it. Becky says this would be a quick way to just double check the items and make sure the correct items were pulled. Could scan the items, see if they're flagged rather than kind of looking at every individual record.
I kind of actually looking at it, I don't think we'd use it. I don't think it takes that much time. Like our selectors scan them into a record set. I look at the record set, I approve it, do the bulk change, and then it goes to tech. I set them to withdrawal, they do the final deletion. But one thing from seeing this, I'm just wondering if we could figure out in Simply Reports how to just schedule this report for people, and then you'd actually get a report that people could use, like with the criteria, just maybe with the advanced search and things. That to me seems like it would be more helpful than having it here, because you're still going to want to, I think every time people weed, there's so many things they're putting back on the shelf for various reasons.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Sally, about I think that was Sally.
Sorry. Yes, Sally
adding
Glenview.
About a Simply Report. So in Simply Reports, you can set up a report and you can save it, and then you can rerun it regularly and or have it emailed to staff. So if that's something that you're interested in setting up, let us know. You can open a help desk ticket as long as you build the report, have it set to, whatever parameters you would need it to. CCS staff can then schedule it to be emailed to you on whatever interval that you would want. There was, and maybe Rachel, you can speak to this. In Simply Reports, you have the ability to make a record set from like a query results. However, with saved reports that are scheduled, like you can't then have it regularly update that record set. But I feel like there was an idea in Idea Exchange that was like every time the report runs, update the record set. So that is interesting, because wouldn't it be cool if you could like have Simply Reports make a weeding record set instead of like an item record set, and then just have it update regularly or something?
There was something in the Idea Exchange about that previously, but I haven't found it since they created the new website.
Oh, bummer. Okay, so maybe we've got to, and Rachel, I feel like that was your idea in Idea Lab, so maybe we need to resubmit that. So if you want to do a little search, and if you find it, we'll send it out to the group to vote on it.
I'll
Yeah,
look
Sarah,
for it.
okay. And Sarah Jo says that the bulk item holds would be really helpful and would make it a little bit more practical, but that she does like the way it visually displays the criteria. Any other comments on it? Again, this is new. It's coming our way. I think we still have a lot to learn about it, but it will be available to you and your library beginning in February. So if you're interested in taking a peek now, you can do that in the training database. Miko, does everyone have permission at least to build templates and weeding record sets in training?
I believe the permission to build record sets is in there for everyone. I'll have to check on building templates and approving.
Okay, so we'll take a look and make sure staff have the permissions to just play around with it and see if it's something you're interested in again. I mean, maybe you're not interested in it normally, but maybe if you have a special circumstance like an intern or a practicum student where, you know, you'd want to more closely review what they might be weeding or helping out with a project, maybe it could be something you'd use in the future. So really interested to see what comes of this. And we'll be leading some training coming up that goes a little bit more in detail than my quick demo did. All right, Sam, then I'll pass it back to you, I think.
Thank you so much for introducing that to us. So next up on our agenda is circulation status needs. So if CCS was able to add a new circulation status, new item circulation status, what would be most valuable to all of our members here? I'll pass that back to Deborah again to expand on that a little bit for us.
Yeah, so in Polaris 7.5, there is a new damaged item workflow. So a new workflow for marking items as damaged. And this new workflow comes with a new kind of built-in and protected damaged circulation status. So this means that our existing damaged circulation status may be available to update to something else. This is kind of contingent on a decision being made by the circulation technical group tomorrow. They are going to be voting on whether they want to be using that new damaged item workflow. So kind of ahead of that discussion, I'm interested in hearing from this group, like if we do have a new circulation status option, what are you looking for here? The one that we have heard kind of time and time again since going live is display. But I don't want to assume that that's still top of everyone's priority. So I'd love to hear if you have any other suggestions. And just for like, if you're not sure, like what are all the circulation statuses? There are a lot of them. They should be listed on your screen right here. So feel free to chime in with your thoughts.
Okay, just like I think I mentioned before, my assistant director, who's big on displays, would really like to see available dash display.
If Natalia chimes in the chat saying display's the one she thought of as well. For those of you that have displays at your library, what's your current workflow for putting items on display? Do you change the item shelf location to display? Do you check them out to a card? Do you do nothing and just put them on display?
Pam from Fremont, and this is a fairly new thing. If the book or item is staying on the same floor, because we have 2 floors, it just gets put on display, and we're supposed to know that if it's not on the shelf where it says it is, we should check displays. But if the item gets moved to another floor, then it's supposed to be checked out to a special record set that'll say that the 2nd floor book is on the 1st floor or vice versa.
Yeah, at Algonquin, when we put up displays, the items all get added to a record set, and then we change to the shelf location to display. And once it comes down, we update it again.
And there's lots of people chiming in the chat. Some libraries change the shelf location to display. A handful of libraries don't do anything. They just put the item on display and then, you know, double check the displays to make sure the item's there. Looks like lots of staff utilize record sets to do the bulk change. So that's helpful. And then Henry, I'm sorry, you probably said this, but it didn't register in my ears. Who's responsible for making those bulk changes?
Tech services. So
Tech services. Okay.
Yeah, our librarians will create the record set, email tech services, and then tech services will update the shelf location to display.
Okay.
I have a
So
follow-up
display
question.
status. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Sam at Fox River Valley. I was gonna say, I have a question for those of you who do utilize the shelf location display. How does your circulation or your shelvers know then that that's a display when the item's returned? Because that's a problem we'd run into in the past, was if we use that shelf location, the book gets checked out. When it gets returned, there's nothing flagging that as going to a different location or letting circulation know they need to alter the item record again, unless we go through the process of adding a display tape or sticker to every single item and then removing it when it comes back, which is kind of tedious. So does anyone else have any workarounds that have helped you guys for that?
It's like in the chat, people are using stickers or tape for display. Interesting.
I think for us, we kind of assume that if something says it's on display, that's where you check for it first. And if you can't find it on display, then we check the shelves, kind of assuming that it was something that was returned. But yeah, we have the same problem where stuff gets checked out and it comes back, and we don't sticker our items. So you're kind of checking both places regardless.
Great, thank you.
So the difference with a display circulation status would be that, so for items that are going to go on display, you would update the circulation status to display. You wouldn't need to change the shelf location. When a patron checked the item out and then returned it, the circulation status would then revert back to available. So it would go from display to checked out, and then when checked back in and returned by the patron, it would go back to available. So it wouldn't automatically go back to that display status. So if libraries would want it to go back on display, then someone would have to update that circ status. I guess, well, so do you guys use it? It sounds like we have at least one yes for a display from Pam over at Fremont, and saying it would be a great feature. Any other options that maybe we're not thinking of that might be more valuable than display?
So Meg from Prospect Heights. I think that this would be more like in addition to a display. But my manager and I were talking about this yesterday, that an in-house option might be useful for items where maybe we're gathering them to put them on display, or like, for instance, I do borrow boxes. So things where maybe they haven't gone to display yet, but they are en route to them, or it's something that maybe we're working on with a project, so that way you just know that we own it, it's available to be checked out, it's just in the back room. So maybe something like that might be useful, that then we could just change that status on there from, and I'm kind of imagining this to be more like in the like drop down, like on an item. So like if I had an item record up, go to where it is and just say, like, instead of lost or missing, say like, it's in-house use. And then that way if it comes up on a hold list, we know to like ask around and be like, does someone have this on their cart or whatever?
All right,
And then
so
when you
in-house
check it
is-
in, it would go back.
One other that had been mentioned was storage. I know some libraries use storage. I see Allie raising.
That was gonna be
Allie
my
raising her hand.
suggestion, storage, yeah.
How would
Oh, I can hear you.
like what types of materials do you put in storage?
Well, we have storage cards, of course, that we check the items out to. But what we need to do then is put a note in, so that when we're looking, say in the OPAC, we see it doesn't just say checked out. Then it would prompt us to go looking in storage for it, because, maybe we have 5 copies of Dogman, 3 are in the back because of limited shelf space. But if you just look at the item in the OPAC, it currently just says available. And as we all know, the due dates don't prompt. So unless you're looking at it on the staff end and see, oh, that item isn't due for a year, it must be in storage because nobody put a note in there. You wouldn't necessarily know to go look in the back, which is kind of obnoxious because then we are placing holds for materials that we have. And in a few cases have accidentally purchased a replacement for a damaged item when there was a decent copy in storage that could have been used instead. So that was, I know not everybody has storage, so it wouldn't be as relevant to the group as something like display would. So, but that was our thought.
This is Nancy from Crystal Lake. We actually have storage as a shelf location. So I don't know if that's something you can add. I don't know if you're limited with how many shelf locations you're able to have, but we use storage as a shelf location. We actually also use a holiday shelf location. And so depending on time of year, that holiday location may be in our storage or it may be on a display, in which case, and there's some sort of like sticker indicating that it's a holiday item, but we just pull those out rather than having to change their location from storage to available. We just say it's holiday. So right now it's not Christmas anymore, but during the Christmas season, we had all those Christmas items out on a display shelf. So I don't know if that something like that would be helpful, but maybe having a storage shelf location would help solve your not checking it out for a year to storage.
And it looks like in the chat, lots of people are using a storage shelf location. And noted that does show up for patrons in the catalog. So the shelf location displays to patrons. The circulation status for those materials will still be available, but hopefully the storage shelf location is a visual cue for both patrons and for staff. Yeah, and we do have, you all have kind of unlimited shelf locations. So if anyone's interested in adding a storage shelf location, we can definitely do that for you. So it sounds like for those of you that have storage shelf locations, it's working out okay. Like it's not super confusing for patrons. Like where's this book on the shelf? If there are any issues, pop in the chat, unmute yourself, but it seems like that seems to be working okay. All right. Any other suggestions for stated a new circulation status? It sounds like display is kind of our hottest suggestion. But again, we've got some time to think about this. And if the circ group votes tomorrow to use the new damaged workflow, then we can make a change.
Great, thank you. That sounds like a really great option for a lot of libraries. So I think that would be appreciated. So that kind of wraps up everything that we had on our agenda previous to the meeting. Pam at Fremont, you wanted to make a quick addition. Do you want to discuss that with us?
Oh no, sorry. I just got confused and I forgot that the circ status had already been a newly added agenda item. So yeah,
Okay.
nothing else.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I was like thinking that it might have been relevant to that, but I wanted to make sure there was nothing more that you needed to discuss about that topic. Okay, excellent. Well, that kind of wraps up everything for this meeting, unless anyone else had any last minute additions. Doesn't sound like it, so I guess I will motion to adjourn this PAS meeting at 10:29 a.m. Can I get a second?
Second.
From Algonquin, I'll second.
Thank you very much. So then this meeting is officially adjourned. We will see you guys all at the next meeting. We'll send out reminders, a month in advance as usual. Right now, that is still planned to be on Zoom. We'll do it virtually again. So great to hear from everybody today. Thanks so much. Have a good rest of your day.